These are the reasons why one of America's most controversial service rifles refuses to disappear, even though many soldiers once believed it was already outdated the moment it entered service. The M14 rifle officially served as the standard weapon of the United States military for barely 6 years. Yet, decades later, it continues appearing on battlefields whenever soldiers need a weapon capable of hitting enemies far beyond the range of most modern rifles. The story of the M14 begins during the tense years of the early Cold War, when American military planners attempted something extremely ambitious. Instead of maintaining several different infantry weapons, they wanted to create a single rifle that could replace 4 famous firearms at once. The new weapon was expected to take over the role of the legendary M1 Garand battle rifle, the lightweight M1 Carbine carried by support troops, the compact M3 submachine gun used in close combat, and even the powerful Browning automatic rifle that had served as a squad automatic weapon during World War II. On paper, the idea seemed brilliant. If every soldier used the same rifle, firing the same ammunition, logistics would become simpler, supplies easier to manage, and training more efficient. The military believed they could create one universal rifle capable of performing every role on the battlefield. But reality quickly proved far more complicated. In 1957, the rifle known as the Springfield T-44 was selected as the new standard service rifle of the United States Army, after narrowly defeating the famous FNF-AL during testing. The decision was controversial from the beginning because many experts believed the FNF-AL had performed better and had already proven itself internationally. Critics claimed the competition favored the American design for political reasons rather than purely technical ones. Production began in 1958 at the historic Springfield Armory, but problems appeared almost immediately. Inspections later revealed that a large number of rifles produced during the early years should never have passed quality control because they contained serious manufacturing defects that affected reliability and durability. Some rifles reportedly suffered dangerous malfunctions during testing, forcing engineers to pause production while they tried to understand why a brand new service rifle was already experiencing critical failures before even reaching the battlefield. Once soldiers began receiving the rifles in larger numbers, complaints quickly spread throughout the military. Receivers cracked under stress, bolts occasionally jammed at the worst possible moments, and many troops discovered that the rifle simply did not behave well during automatic fire. The M14 fired the powerful 7.62 NATO cartridge, which produced strong recoil and significant muzzle climb. When soldiers attempted to fire the rifle in automatic mode, the barrel often rose dramatically after only a few shots, sending rounds high above the intended target. Because of this uncontrollable recoil, many soldiers joked that the rifle behaved more like an anti-aircraft weapon than an infantry rifle. Environmental conditions made the situation even worse. The rifle used traditional wooden stocks made from walnut or birch, and when these rifles were deployed to the humid jungles of Vietnam, the wood absorbed moisture, expanded, and caused noticeable shifts in the weapon's accuracy. By 1962, a Department of Defense report delivered a devastating conclusion. The M14, which had been designed to replace the famous M1 Garand, was actually inferior to the older rifle in several important ways. For the Pentagon, this was deeply embarrassing. After years of development and large financial investments, The military was forced to admit that the new rifle had failed to deliver the improvements it promised. Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara finally intervened and ordered production halted in January 1963, after more than 1 million rifles had already been built. The M14's career as America's official service rifle lasted only 6 years before the lighter and more modern M16 began replacing it across combat units. Normally, that would have been the end of the story, but the M14 refused to disappear. During the Vietnam War, even as most American soldiers carried the newer M16 rifle, some snipers and specialized troops continued using the M14 because of its powerful cartridge and long-range performance. Marine scout sniper Chuck Mawhinney famously used the rifle in combat, including one engagement in 1969 where he reportedly eliminated 16 enemy soldiers during a single battle. Because of its impressive range and stopping power, the military continued using modified versions of the rifle during the 1970s and 1980s as sniper systems, such as the M21. These rifles were capable of excellent accuracy, although they were also notoriously sensitive and required careful maintenance. For many years, large numbers of M14 rifles sat quietly in storage warehouses across the United States. Then, the attacks of September 11th changed everything. When American forces entered Afghanistan, they quickly discovered that the mountainous terrain created a different kind of battlefield. Firefights often happened at distances between 400 and 600 meters, where enemy fighters attacked from distant ridgelines and valleys. At those ranges, the lighter 5.56 ammunition used by standard M4 and M16 rifles sometimes struggled to remain effective. Commanders needed a weapon capable of reaching much farther. The answer was surprisingly simple. Thousands of M14 rifles were still sitting in storage. Special units began modernizing the old rifle by installing modern aluminum chassis systems that allowed optics, rails, and other accessories to be attached. These upgraded versions became known as the Mark 14 Enhanced Battle Rifle. Although the rifle looked modern on the outside, internally it was still the same design created during the 1950s. Even with upgrades, the weapon remained heavy and sometimes difficult to maintain, but it still offered one major advantage. The powerful 7.62 NATO cartridge allowed soldiers to engage targets at distances where lighter rifles struggled. Because of this capability, the M14 continued appearing in limited roles long after its official retirement. Even today, the rifle refuses to disappear completely. Thousands remain stored in military inventories, and many have been transferred to allied nations around the world. More than 60 years after its creation, the rifle that once failed as America's standard service weapon still continues finding its way back onto modern battlefields. A weapon that many believed should have disappeared long ago has instead become something unexpected. A rifle that simply refuses to die.